Today, we're getting into section 2.5. If you've been paying attention, we're skipping a lesson, and this is called three-dimensional figures. So we'll get into this here in a moment, but chapter 2, I got to give you the deal, is kind of a little weird, and technically kind of what goes on like 2-3 through the rest of the chapter is it's kind of like a lesson that is going to have its own whole chapter later. So yesterday when we did area and perimeter, later on in the year we're going to have a whole chapter where we do that. Today we're going to talk about 3D figures. We're going to have a whole chapter where we do that later. So they're kind of like little just introduction sections. And because of that, we're not going to do anything else in chapter 2 after today. Like no more new lessons. So that means it's only what we've learned this week. 2.1 and 2.2 were a bunch of angle stuff. Then yesterday we dabbled in area a little bit. And today we're going to talk about 3D figures. And then we're going to get out of this chapter. And so what we need to do, since today will be our last section, on Monday we're going to do some review over this stuff. And then on Tuesday, we're going to have what I call a quest. It's a quiz/test because it's not been like a crazy big chapter, but we just kind of need to move on and get out of this and get on to bigger and better things. So we'll review on Monday, have that little quest. A couple people have said, how can I get my grade to look a little bit better? The quest on Tuesday. The quest will give you a chance to get a good grade and get your grades ready for interms and all of that. And then at the end of next week, you know how you've been taking those great map tests in English. We get to take a map test in here. And I know our internet's going to give us no problems, but we'll be kind of heading towards that at the end of next week. So just so you kind of can see on the horizon where we're heading, that's just a little explanation. So let's go into 3D shapes. The video, I was like, oh, maybe we can watch a video today. But this video is already outdated. They're like, we don't know if you've heard of 3D printing, but there's this ability to print things in 3 dimensions. I'm like, that's old news. So we're not even going to watch that. And then we got our standards for the day. And then look at all these vocabulary words we could write. We're just going to write one. We're going to write polyhedron. And I'll read it for us. Polyhedron is a closed 3-dimensional figure made up of flat polygonal regions. So a closed 3-dimensional figure made up of flat polygonal regions. So yesterday we learned about a polygon, that's 2D. A polyhedron is 3D. So those are the terms to use as we kind of go through this chapter. Polyhedron is just like a 3D shape, like a pyramid or a prism. That's our special name for 3D shapes. Okay, now I'm going to point out one word there. It says flat sides. So that means anything with a curve to it, not a polyhedron. Okay, so let's see what else we can get into. Like I said, there's not going to be much writing today at all. So let me show you this polyhedron and just kind of label the parts. So overall, the polyhedron itself is the shape, the whole solid. A face is just one of the flat surfaces. So if you think about like a cube, it's made up of 6 flat surfaces. So that's 6 faces. An edge is just any of the line segments that connect the flat surfaces. And a vertex is just all of the corners. So those are kind of the names you might hear thrown out there. Polyhedron's the big thing, and then face, edge, and vertex. Okay, now some special types of polyhedra. So this right here is a polyhedron, and this is a polyhedron. This is officially known as a prism. And so for a prism, it's going to have two bases, and then it's got a lot of rectangles around. So if you look up here, the two bases are actually pentagons, and then it's got a lot of rectangles. And then this is a pyramid, and so for it to be a pyramid, it only has one base, and then you have a bunch of triangles that meet at a point. So these are two of the most basic kinds, the kinds that we'll end up using a lot, a prism and a pyramid. Okay, then underneath, we have some shapes that are not polyhedra. Why aren't these three polyhedra? Yeah, they have curves to them. We still see them though. So that first one, we've seen that before, that's a cylinder. Then we have a cone, and then we have a sphere. So we'll still talk about these. They're just not officially polyhedra because they have curves to them. And look at all these pretty pictures. So these are just some examples of different prisms and pyramids. You name the prisms and the pyramids by their bases. So if you look at this prism, it's on its side right here. The two bases are triangles, so it's called a triangular prism. Here, this is kind of like your standard Kleenex box. The two bases are rectangles, so it's called a rectangular prism. This has bases that are pentagons, so it's a pentagonal prism. And then when you have pyramids, you name them by their bases as well. So a triangular pyramid, a rectangular pyramid, and a pentagonal pyramid. So just different shapes to start recognizing. Like I said, we're going to spend a whole chapter on these shapes later. So this is just kind of an intro to start kind of looking at these. These shapes we're not going to get into right now at all. They're very special shapes that we'll see from time to time, and we'll do that later. All right, so first type of question is, this would just be like a sorting activity. Can we decide which ones are polyhedra and which ones aren't? So how many polyhedra do we have up there? 2. And then which one is not the polyhedron? Yeah, that middle cylinder. So you're looking for this circular part. If it has anything circular, anything curved, not a polyhedron. So there are some questions just asking about that. Okay, then some other types of questions. They'll ask you to come up with the name. So this has one base and it meets at a vertex. What kind of shape is that? That we just talked about. Starts with a P. One base meets at a vertex. Michaela. Other one. Not thinking of it. What is it? Somebody help her, Rachel? Pyramid. Yep. So the pyramid, because it has the one base. And then do you see how we have a shape on the bottom that's a rectangle? We would call that a rectangular pyramid. And then the way that they ask this next question, name the bases, the faces, the edges, and the vertices. You're going to have some drop-down menus where you pick the right things. So like when you name the base is E, D, C, B. When you name the faces, you're naming all of these triangles. The edges, you're naming all of the line segments. And the vertices, you're naming just all those corners. So like one of the questions is, name the vertices on this shape. And then it'll have an option like A, B, C, D, E. And the other option will be H, I, J, K, L. Look to see what letters are on the corners. So it's not groundbreaking, I promise. Let's look at this shape. Is this a polyhedra? Nope. What's the name of this shape? Cylinder. Is this a polyhedra? Yeah. And this is kind of like two pyramids kind of stacked on top of each other. Let me show you another question. Okay, then this is another way that your homework questions are going to look. They're going to give you this shape, and you look up, is this solid a polyhedra? No, we would say is not. The base is a circle. So the solid is a cone. So those are kind of how they ask the questions for this lesson. Let's look at another one. Okay, is this solid a polyhedron? Yeah, no curves. Okay, the base, remember how I said earlier, this is kind of on its side? So what is our base? Triangle. So the solid is, it's got two bases. What kind of shape has two bases? Prism. And then you have to pick which of these segments is an edge. So is JL an edge? Is MK an edge? Yeah. And then we would say, what kind of shape is a face? So what kind of shape is this? Rectangle. So that's kind of what you're going to do. But this is what I want to put for our last thing in our notes. I want to put in the definition of prism and pyramid, because that's what you'll have to know the most of. So a prism has two bases. The other faces are rectangles. And then for a pyramid, it has one base, and the other faces are triangles. So this will help you kind of when you're trying to identify the difference. Those will be the two big ones. And again, we're just skimming the surface of this. It's not anything crazy, just a little practice for later on. And we'll have that. I want to say the homework is like 5 questions. It's not going to be anything too strenuous for your weekend. And so we are done with that. Just a quick little lesson. And then next week we know. Next week's just kind of a little weird. There won't be many days of notes next week. Can you believe it? You've made it through 3 weeks of school? Does it feel like it? No? Shorter or longer? Shorter? Okay. Next week are interims. Oh my goodness, I turn in your interim grades next week.